Welcome to the channel.
Alright, so I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here we are. I don't even know if I'm looking for advice or just need to get this out of my system. Either way, I guess I should start from the beginning. My name's Drew, and I've been married to Madeline for 40 years. Yeah, 40. We built a whole life together, raised kids, went through tough times, celebrated milestones. I thought we were solid. Thought we'd grow old together. And in a way, I guess we are. Just not how I pictured. A couple of months ago, we moved into Maple Haven, this nice little retirement community. I wasn't exactly thrilled about it at first, but Madeline loved the idea. She said it'd be peaceful, a fresh start for us. And honestly, I was willing to go along with whatever made her happy. That's the kind of husband I was. At first, things were fine. We settled in, made some friends, started getting into the routine of it. Madeline, being the social butterfly she is, got close to a lot of people fast. Me? I liked keeping to myself, but I tried to be a good sport about it. She was always dragging me to events, introducing me to neighbors. One of them was Victor Hayes. Victor was, I don't know, one of those guys. Too charming, too smooth, like he always had the perfect thing to say. A little too friendly with Madeline, if you ask me. But I trusted her. 40 years together, I figured there was nothing that could shake that foundation. Then one day, everything changed. Madeline sat me down in the living room, real serious. I thought maybe she had bad news, maybe something about her health, maybe about the kids. But no. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "Drew, I don't want to lie to you anymore. I've been seeing Victor." Just like that. Like she was telling me the weather. I swear, I thought I misheard her. I laughed, actually laughed, because it was so absurd. But she wasn't joking. She was dead serious. She even had the nerve to tell me that Victor made her feel alive again, that their connection was something she hadn't felt in years. I couldn't even speak. My own wife, my partner of 4 decades, was looking at me like I was just, in the way. And the worst part? She didn't even try to hide it anymore. She moved in with him. In the same damn community. Right in front of everyone we knew. And me? I was still paying for the house. For both of them. Because, of course, I couldn't just stop supporting her. Legally, financially, I was still tied to her. So there I was, watching my wife play house with another man, while I was stuck footing the bill. I should have been angry. I should have fought. But all I felt was, nothing. Like something inside me just shut off. And that's when I found the business card. A plain little thing, tucked under my windshield wiper at the grocery store. An escort service. Something about companionship for distinguished gentlemen. I don't know why I even kept it, but I did. I wasn't looking for revenge. I wasn't even looking for comfort. I just wanted to feel like someone still saw value in me. So I made the call. And that's where everything started to change. I don't even know what I was thinking when I picked up the phone. Maybe I wasn't thinking at all. Maybe I was just tired of feeling like a damn ghost in my own life. I dialed the number from that little business card, half expecting some sleazy guy to answer. Instead, a soft, professional voice picked up. Rosewood Services. How can I help you? For a second, I froze. What the hell was I even doing? But then I looked around my empty house, our house that wasn't really ours anymore, and I just went with it. I'd like to make a reservation, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The woman on the phone, who introduced herself as Claire, asked me a few things: what kind of company I was looking for, my preferences, the kind of experience I wanted. I had no idea what to say. It wasn't like I had a checklist for this sort of thing. I just told her I wanted someone mature, someone who could hold a conversation. Someone who wasn't just a pretty face but actually had substance. Claire was polite, professional, and didn't make me feel like some desperate old man. She gave me a few options, and one name stood out, Evelyn. "She's very elegant," Claire said. "Classy, intelligent, and excellent company for dinner or events." Dinner. That's all I wanted. Just a nice evening where, for once, I wasn't the pitiful old fool everyone in Maple Haven whispered about behind my back. We set the meeting for Saturday night at a high-end restaurant in town. Claire gave me instructions on how everything worked. Evelyn would meet me there, be discreet, and I could extend the evening if I wanted. Everything was on my terms. When I hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone. Was this really happening? Was I really about to do this? I thought about calling it off. But then I remembered the way Madeline looked at Victor. The way she spoke to me like I was nothing. So no. I wasn't canceling. For once, I was going to do something for me. Saturday came faster than I expected. I spent the day trying not to think too much. Didn't want to second-guess myself. When evening rolled around, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my suit. It had been a long time since I'd dressed up like this. The last time was probably for some stupid community event Madeline dragged me to, back when I still thought she cared. I looked good. Not young, not flashy, but put together. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel invisible. I arrived at the restaurant early, nerves creeping in as I waited. The place was upscale, with soft lighting and a quiet elegance. I wondered if anyone from Maple Haven would see me here. If they did, let them. Then Evelyn walked in. She was nothing like what I expected. I thought she'd be over the top, dramatic, some exaggerated fantasy for old men clinging to their youth. But she wasn't. She was refined, with this effortless grace about her. Tall, poised, with dark auburn hair in soft waves and a dress that was simple but somehow stunning. When she spotted me, she smiled. Not forced, not fake. Just warm. Like I was somebody worth smiling at. "Drew," she said as she reached the table. I stood up, suddenly aware of how stiff I felt. "Yeah. Evelyn?" She nodded. "It's lovely to meet you." And just like that, I wasn't nervous anymore. We sat down, ordered drinks, and started talking. At first, I wasn't sure what to say. But Evelyn? She made it easy. She asked about my interests, my past, my thoughts on things. She actually listened. It had been years since someone looked at me like I mattered. We talked about music, travel, books. She told me about a little cafe in Paris she loved, how she once spent a summer just wandering through old European streets, getting lost on purpose. I told her about the cross-country road trip I took back in my 20s, before I settled down. It had been so long since I talked about things like that. Then she leaned forward slightly, eyes curious. "And what brings you here tonight, Drew?" I hesitated. Should I tell her the truth? Should I lie? But something about Evelyn made me want to be honest. "My wife left me," I said. "For another man. Right in front of me. And I guess I just needed to remember what it feels like to be chosen for once." Evelyn didn't react with pity or fake sympathy. She just gave me this knowing nod. "Then let's make tonight a good one." And we did. For the first time in months, I laughed. I relaxed. I wasn't the discarded husband of Maple Haven, I was just Drew. A man having dinner with a beautiful woman who made him feel alive again. And for the first time in a long, long while, I didn't feel alone. Dinner stretched longer than I expected. Evelyn wasn't just good company, she was effortless. The kind of person who could make you forget your own misery without even trying. At one point, I caught myself smiling for no reason. Just sitting there, listening to her talk about some art exhibit she'd been to, enjoying the moment. And then it hit me, I hadn't felt like this in years. Not just since Madeline left. Years before that. At some point, the waiter came over with the check, and I realized I didn't want the night to end. "Would you like to go for a walk?" I asked before I could stop myself. Evelyn studied me for a moment, like she was trying to read between the lines of what I was really asking. Then she smiled. "I'd love to." We left the restaurant and wandered down the quiet streets, the night air cool but not uncomfortable. There was something so simple about it. No expectations, no pressure, just two people walking side by side. "I don't usually do this," I admitted after a while. She glanced over. "Do what?" "This. Any of this. Calling an escort, going out like this. It's not me." Evelyn nodded, like she understood. "Well, then maybe it's time to figure out who you really are now." I let that sit for a moment. Because the truth was, I had no idea. For 40 years, I'd been Madeline's husband. My identity was built around us, around the life we had together. And now? Now I was just a man who didn't know what came next. We ended up at a small park, the kind with wooden benches and old street lamps. Evelyn sat down, crossing her legs gracefully, and looked at me. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you still love her?" I exhaled. "I don't know." And that was the truth. Did I love the woman I married? The one I built a life with, raised a family with? Absolutely. But the woman who looked me in the eye and told me she felt alive with another man? Who humiliated me in front of everyone and didn't even seem to care? I didn't know that woman. Evelyn didn't say anything for a moment. Then she leaned back, looking up at the sky. "I've met a lot of men in your situation, Drew. And I'll tell you something, most of them spend so much time trying to make sense of her choices that they forget to start making their own." I looked at her. "And what do you think I should do?" She smiled slightly. "I think you should stop waiting for your old life to come back. Because it's gone. And that means you get to build something new." Something about that hit me deep. Because I had been waiting. Waiting for Madeline to regret it, waiting for people to stop talking about me like I was some pitiful fool. But what if I stopped waiting? What if I just moved on? I looked at Evelyn, this woman who had no reason to care about me beyond a paid arrangement, and yet somehow, she was the first person in a long time who made me feel like I mattered. "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. She just smiled. "Anytime." And for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I actually believed that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as lost as I thought. When I got home that night, I sat in my car for a long time, just staring at the house. The lights were on in the living room, her living room now. I could see shadows moving inside, laughter drifting through the open window. Madeline and Victor. Like I didn't even exist. Like 40 years of marriage was just some chapter she skimmed through before tossing the book aside. I should have felt the usual gut punch. The familiar weight in my chest. But instead, I just felt different. Like something had shifted inside me. I stepped out of the car, straightened my jacket, and walked to my front door. No hesitation. No pitiful glances toward their house. I wasn't the sad, discarded husband anymore. I was a man who just had dinner with a beautiful woman. A man who felt alive for the first time in years. And then, right on cue, Madeline's voice rang out. "Drew?" I turned. She was standing on Victor's porch, arms crossed, that same fake concern on her face. "It's late," she said, like she had the right to care. I just looked at her. Not angry, not heartbroken. Just tired. "Yeah. It is." She narrowed her eyes. Where were you? The question caught me off guard. Since when did she care? She'd spent months acting like I didn't exist, and now she wanted to know where I'd been? I let the silence stretch. Then, just to see the reaction, I shrugged. Had dinner. Her lips pressed into a thin line. With who? I smiled. Not because I wanted to, but because I knew it would drive her crazy. Good night, Madeline. I walked inside, shutting the door behind me. And for the first time in a long, long while, I slept soundly. The next morning, I woke up feeling different. Lighter. I made coffee, took a walk, and didn't once look toward Victor's house. I wasn't waiting for Madeline's regret anymore. And then, just as I sat down with my second cup of coffee, my phone buzzed. A message. Evelyn, good morning, Drew. I just wanted to say, I had a wonderful time last night. I hope you did too. I stared at the screen. Then, without overthinking, I typed back. I really did. Thank you, Evelyn. I hit send. And just like that, the first spark of something new flickered to life. The moment I sent that text to Evelyn, something changed. Not just in my head, but in the way I carried myself. For months, I had been walking around Maple Haven like a ghost, ignored, pitted, whispered about. But now? Now I had a secret. A good one. And people noticed. It started small. A neighbor at the clubhouse commented that I looked sharper lately. Someone else said I seemed in good spirits. Even the guy at the coffee shop asked if I'd been on vacation. But the best reaction? That came from Madeline. She wasn't used to me acting normal. Wasn't used to me not looking miserable, not sulking around like some abandoned puppy. And when people stop seeing you as a victim, it bothers the ones who put you there. The first time she saw me chatting with the woman at the front desk, just a friendly conversation, nothing more, I could see it in her eyes. The flicker of something. Not guilt. Not regret. Something worse. She was curious. That's when I knew I had her attention again. That afternoon, Evelyn texted me again. Evelyn, I keep thinking about our conversation the other night. Would you like to meet for coffee sometime? No obligations, just good company. I stared at the message for a moment. Then, before I could talk myself out of it, I replied. I'd love that. When and where? We met at a quiet little cafe on the other side of town, away from Maple Haven. I didn't need anyone reporting back to Madeline or, worse, Victor. Evelyn was already there when I arrived, sitting by the window with a book in her hands. She looked up, smiled, and just like before, I felt that ease settle over me. Drew, she said warmly. It's good to see you. We talked over coffee for an hour, maybe two. Nothing deep this time, just little things. Movies, books, old memories. And I realized something, I wasn't just pretending to be okay. I was okay. When we left the cafe, she touched my arm lightly. I hope this isn't the last time we do this. I didn't even hesitate. It won't be. And then, as I drove back home, something strange happened. I found myself hoping Madeline would see me walk in. Not because I wanted her back. Not because I needed her approval. But because I wanted her to wonder. To doubt. To feel just a fraction of what she put me through. The game had started. And this time, I wasn't playing to lose. I didn't have to wait long for Madeline to notice. That night, as I was taking out the trash, she appeared in the driveway, arms crossed like she just happened to be outside at the same time. Drew, she said, all casual. You've been out a lot lately. I shrugged. Yeah. She waited, like I was supposed to fill in the blanks. Like I owed her an explanation. When I didn't, she tilted her head, studying me. Is there someone new? I turned to her slowly, letting the silence stretch. Then, with the calmest voice I could muster, I said, "Why do you care?" She blinked, clearly not expecting that. But she didn't have an answer. Because she didn't care. Not really. She just wanted to know. And that's when I saw it. The first crack in her mask. She shifted, suddenly uncomfortable. I was just wondering. People have been talking. That made me laugh. Oh, now you care about what people are saying? Her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't like that. Not one bit. Good. I didn't wait for a response. I just nodded, tossed the trash bag into the bin, and walked back inside without another word. For the first time since she left, I had the upper hand. And it felt damn good. The next morning, I had another text from Evelyn. "Evelyn, I enjoyed our coffee date. You make good company, Drew." I stared at the message a little longer than I needed to. Then I replied. The feeling's mutual. Let's do it again soon." And just like that, my world kept shifting. I wasn't the abandoned husband anymore. I wasn't the man Madeline could humiliate and forget. I was something else. Something better. And for the first time in a long, long time, I was winning. A few days passed, and I kept doing what I had been doing, living. I went out, I smiled more, I stopped waiting for things to go back to the way they were. And just like that, something strange started happening. People in Maple Haven, the same ones who used to pity me, the ones who whispered behind my back, were looking at me differently. Curious glances. A few nods of respect. Even casual conversation that didn't feel laced with that "poor Drew" tone. And Madeline? She was watching. I'd catch her sometimes, peeking through the blinds when I'd leave. Pretending to check the mail when I pulled into the driveway. She wasn't asking questions anymore, but I could feel them hanging in the air. And I loved it. Evelyn and I met up again. This time for dinner at a quiet little steakhouse just outside town. It felt different this time. Not just like a meeting, but like something real. She told me about her past, how she had been married once, how she had lost herself in that relationship and had to rebuild from scratch. "I know how it feels," she said, sipping her wine. "To wake up one day and realize you don't even recognize yourself anymore." I nodded. Because damn, did I know that feeling. "But here's the thing," she continued. "Sometimes losing yourself is the best thing that can happen. Because it gives you a chance to start over the way you want." That hit me. Because for so long, I had been waiting for the old version of my life to come back. But what if Evelyn was right? What if I had the chance to build something better? When I got home that night, I saw Madeline and Victor on their porch. She was laughing at something he said, but when she saw me step out of my car, dressed sharp, looking good, her smile faltered. Just for a second. But I caught it. I gave a small nod, like I hadn't noticed, and headed inside. The moment I shut the door, I actually laughed. Because I had spent months wondering what she was thinking, wondering if she even cared about what she did to me. And now? Now she was the one wondering about me. And that? That was the best feeling in the world. The next morning, something unexpected happened. I was out for a walk, enjoying the fresh air, when I heard footsteps behind me. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maple Haven was full of retirees who liked their morning strolls. But then I heard her voice. "Drew." I turned, and there she was, Madeline. She looked different. A little tense. Like she had rehearsed whatever she was about to say. I just raised an eyebrow. "Something you need?" She hesitated, then forced a polite smile. "I just wanted to check in. You've been out a lot lately." I let that sit between us for a second. She really had the nerve to act like she cared now? I crossed my arms. And? Her smile wavered. And I was wondering if everything was okay. I actually laughed. A small, sharp sound. You left me for another man, moved in with him in front of our entire community, and now you're checking in? She had the decency to look uncomfortable. Drew, don't be like that. Like what? I asked, tilting my head. Unbothered? Her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't like that answer. I just smiled. A real one this time. Then, just because I could, I pulled out my phone, checked a message, Evelyn's message, and replied right in front of her. Madeline's eyes flicked to my screen. She tried to play it cool, but I saw the way her fingers clenched. Good. Anyway, I said, slipping my phone back in my pocket, I should get going. Got plans? She opened her mouth, like she wanted to say something else. But instead, she just gave a stiff nod. And as I walked away, I knew. For the first time since this whole mess started, I was winning. That little encounter with Madeline? It wasn't just a one-time thing. The next few days, I started noticing it more. The way she hovered. The way her eyes lingered just a little too long when she thought I wasn't looking. Victor? He hadn't changed. Still the same smug bastard, walking around like he won some prize. But Madeline? Something was shifting. And I didn't even have to do anything. I just kept living. Kept seeing Evelyn. Kept smiling, kept being the man I should have been all along. And people noticed. One afternoon, I was out front checking the mail when one of the Maple Haven ladies, Carol, I think her name was, walked by and gave me this knowing little grin. "You're looking good these days, Drew," she said. "Finally moving on, huh?" I just chuckled. Something like that. Madeline was on her porch when that happened. She heard every word. And I swear, I saw her jaw tighten. Later that evening, I was in my driveway when, sure enough, she walked over. "You're really out and about these days," she said. Her voice was light, but there was an edge to it. I just shrugged. "Yeah. It's been nice." She hesitated. Then, with this casual little tilt of her head, she asked, "So, who is she?" I grinned. "Who says there's a she?" Madeline scoffed, like she didn't buy it for a second. "Come on, Drew. You're dressing nicer. Smiling more. Someone's got you acting like this." I let a beat pass. Then I met her eyes, completely calm. "And if there is?" I asked. For the first time since this whole thing started, she didn't have a response. She just stood there. Blinking. Processing. And that's when it hit me. She had been so sure I would stay broken. That I'd just sit here, bitter and alone, while she played house with Victor. But now? Now I wasn't miserable. I wasn't waiting. I was moving forward. And it was killing her. That night, Evelyn and I had dinner again. Nothing fancy. Just a quiet meal, good conversation, and a few glasses of wine. At one point, she leaned in, studying me with a little smirk. "You look like a man who's enjoying himself." I took a sip of my drink, chuckling. "I think I am." She smiled. "Good. You deserve it." And for the first time in years, I actually believed that. When I got home, I saw something strange. Madeline's car was gone. Victor was sitting alone on their porch, staring off into the distance, looking annoyed. I just smiled to myself. Because I didn't know where she went. But I knew it had something to do with me. And that? That was just the beginning. Next morning, I was out watering the lawn when Madeline came walking back into Maple Haven. Alone. She wasn't wearing the usual smug, confident look she had whenever she was with Victor. No, this time she looked off. Tired. Unsettled. Like something wasn't sitting right. She didn't see me at first. But when she did, she actually paused. I just kept watering the grass like I hadn't noticed. But in my head, I was already piecing it together. She had left last night. Didn't take her car. Didn't come back until morning. Where had she been? And more importantly, why was Victor sitting alone on the porch looking like a kicked dog? I didn't say a word. Didn't ask. Just let her squirm in the silence. Finally, she spoke. You've been busy lately. Same routine. Same nosy little questions. But this time, I just smiled. Yeah. Life's good. She studied me, trying to read something off my face. You seeing someone? I let the pause stretch. Then, without a hint of hesitation, I said, yes. It was the first time I had actually admitted it. And the moment the words left my mouth, I saw it. A flicker of something in her eyes. Not sadness. Not jealousy. Regret. She tried to cover it up fast, smoothing her expression. But it was there. And I had seen it. She forced a little laugh. Well, that's good. I mean, I'm happy for you. Liar. But I just nodded. Thanks. Then, just to twist the knife a little, I pulled out my phone, checked a text, one from Evelyn, and smiled as I typed back. I could feel Madeline watching me. And for the first time in months, I wasn't the one feeling discarded. She was. And damn, did that feel good. That night, I had dinner with Evelyn again. This time, I told her everything. Not just about Madeline's betrayal, but about how I had spent so long being the guy who waited, who hoped, who felt like nothing without his marriage. She listened, patient as always. And when I was done, she leaned forward, resting her hand lightly on mine. Drew, she said softly. You are so much more than what she left behind. And for the first time, I actually believed it. When I got back home, Victor's car was gone. Madeline's, however, still parked. And the light in the bedroom was off. She was alone. And something told me. For the first time since she ran off with Victor, she was actually feeling it. The next morning, I was sipping my coffee on the porch when I saw Madeline again. She was sitting alone on her porch, staring at nothing. No Victor. No smug expression. Just, lost in thought. I wasn't surprised. Victor hadn't come back last night. I could have ignored her. Could have walked inside and let her sit there in whatever mess she had created. But something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe amusement, made me say, trouble in paradise? She snapped out of it, turning toward me, startled. What? I took another sip of my coffee. Victor. Didn't see his car last night. Thought you two were inseparable. Her lips pressed into a thin line. He needed space. I laughed under my breath. Space. That's rich. Guess it's not as fun when you're the one being left behind, huh? Her face hardened. That's not what's happening. Sure. I smirked. Whatever helps you sleep at night. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, but then? She didn't. She just sat there. Silent. And I realized something right then, she was finally starting to feel what I had felt for months. That afternoon, Evelyn and I met for lunch. She noticed the shift in my mood right away. You look satisfied. I chuckled. Let's just say I think the honeymoon phase might be over for Madeline and Victor. Evelyn smirked. That didn't take long. No, it didn't. I set my fork down, thinking. It's funny, for so long, I wanted her to feel the same pain she put me through. And now that it's happening, I shrugged. It's not as satisfying as I thought. Evelyn studied me for a moment, then smiled. That's because you're already past it, Drew. She's the one stuck now. And you know what? She was right. I wasn't waiting for Madeline's regret anymore. Because I didn't need it. That night, I got home and saw Madeline pacing in her front yard, phone in hand. She looked frustrated. Victor still hadn't come back. I watched her for a second, then, just to add fuel to the fire, I pulled out my phone and called Evelyn right there in the driveway. Loud enough for Madeline to hear, I said, "Hey, beautiful. Just got home. Can't wait to see you again." I didn't need to look at Madeline to know she heard. I could feel the shift. I could feel the regret settling in. She had chosen him. And now? He was gone. And I was moving on. The next morning, I was taking a slow walk around the neighborhood, coffee in hand, when I saw her again. Madeline. Sitting alone on her porch. Looking restless. Looking worried. Victor still hadn't come back. I didn't say anything. Didn't even acknowledge her. Just kept walking, minding my own business. But that didn't sit well with her. Drew. I stopped. Turned. Raised an eyebrow. Yeah. She hesitated. I could see the battle going on in her head. Finally, she sighed. Can we talk? I didn't answer right away. Just took a slow sip of my coffee, letting her sit in the discomfort. Then, calmly, I said, about what, Madeline? She shifted, like she was trying to find the right words. I feel like we left things on a bad note. That made me laugh. Left things? I repeated. You mean when you walked out of our marriage and moved in with another man? She flinched. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just smiled. But you did. She sighed, rubbing her arms like she was cold. I don't know what I expected with Victor. I thought, she trailed off, then shook her head. I don't know anymore. There it was. The doubt. The regret. She wasn't saying it outright, but I knew exactly what was happening. Victor had chased the thrill of taking another man's wife. But now? The excitement had worn off. The reality of being with a woman who left her husband for him? That wasn't as fun anymore. And now Madeline was realizing she might have made a mistake. I let a silence stretch between us before I said, "Sounds like a you problem." She looked at me, startled. And that's when I saw it. For the first time since she left, she realized I wasn't an option anymore. I wasn't waiting for her. I wasn't broken. I wasn't going to save her from her own choices. She had thrown me away like I didn't matter. And now? She was finally feeling it. I turned to leave, but then, just because I could, I paused and said, "By the way, I hope you're free Friday. Evelyn and I are hosting dinner. Some of the neighbors will be there." Her expression dropped. "Evelyn?" she echoed. I just grinned. "Yeah. You'll love her." Then I walked away, leaving her standing there, looking like she had just lost the game she thought she was winning. And the best part? She had. Friday rolled around, and just like I had planned, Evelyn and I hosted a little dinner at my place. Nothing too fancy, just a small gathering of neighbors, some wine, some laughter. And, of course, an audience. Madeline. She was there, sitting stiffly at the other end of the table, pretending to enjoy herself while watching me and Evelyn the entire night. She hated it. I could see it. Hated how natural Evelyn and I were together. Hated how the neighbors, the same ones who used to whisper behind my back, were now complimenting me on how happy I looked. Hated that I had moved on, and done it better than she ever expected. And then? It got worse for her. Halfway through dinner, Carol, the same neighbor who had been keeping tabs on everything, leaned over and said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, "Drew, I have to say, you really seem like a different man lately. It's nice to see you smiling again." I chuckled, glancing at Evelyn. "Well, good company helps." Evelyn smiled, resting a hand on mine. "He's a wonderful man," she said simply. The table awed. "Madeline?" She froze. And for a split second, I saw it. The realization. She had lost me. Not just in a "maybe we can talk later" way. Not in a "maybe one day we'll be friends" way. No. She had thrown me away, and now she was stuck watching me be happier without her. And that? That was the moment I knew. I had won. After dinner, as guests were leaving, I stepped outside to walk Evelyn to her car. And right there, standing in the driveway like a ghost from the past, was Madeline. Waiting. Alone. I glanced at her, then at Evelyn. Evelyn, ever the graceful one, just gave my arm a light squeeze. "I'll text you later," she whispered. She kissed my cheek, just long enough for Madeline to see, and left. I turned back to my ex-wife. "Something you need?" She looked at me, eyes searching. "Drew, can we talk?" I didn't answer right away. Just studied her. She looked small. Like a woman who had finally realized she wasn't special. That she wasn't untouchable. That she had gambled, and lost. Finally, I said, "About what, Madeline?" Her voice wavered. "About us." I let out a slow breath. Then I smiled. "There is no us." And with that, I walked inside. Leaving her standing there. Alone. Just like she left me. I slept like a rock that night. No tossing, no turning, no waking up with that pit in my stomach. Just peace. And in the morning? Madeline was gone. Not just from my driveway, Victor's house too. I don't know where she went. Don't really care. Victor? He was still around. But something about him was different. The smugness was gone. He looked irritated, distant, like a man who realized he didn't win the prize he thought he did. I almost laughed. What did he expect? He stole another man's wife and thought that made him special? Nah. It just meant he was the next sucker in line. That weekend, Evelyn and I went out to dinner. Nothing fancy, just a little Italian place we both liked. And for the first time in forever, I wasn't thinking about Madeline. Didn't care where she was. Didn't care if she was regretting things. Didn't care if she spent the rest of her life wondering if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. Because I wasn't the man she left behind anymore. I was better. Evelyn reached across the table, brushing her fingers against mine. "You seem lighter tonight," she said, smiling. I thought about that for a second. Then I smiled back. I think I finally let go. And I had. Because this was my life now. Not Madeline's. Not Victor's. Mine. And for the first time in years, it actually felt like it was just beginning.
Goodbye.